Welcome to the Careerfluencer podcast. This is Austin Albrecht. I'm a digital analyst currently based out of Dallas, Texas. In any situation. Ultimately, you're going to be the one that makes all the decisions in your own life. And so you're going to be the one that needs to pull the trigger. That's why you need to be your own biggest advocate. You're the only one that can really support you through and through. Right when I was about to graduate, probably 4 months, it was kind of a mad dash to just apply wherever we wanted and to pretty much any job that would take me. So I was applying for sales jobs, account manager jobs, analyst jobs, financial, anything you can name. Another big decision too was where to live, because at the time I was pretty much living in Missoula, Montana, a town of around 80,000 people, about 60,000 when school was out. So there wasn't a whole lot of career opportunities for me there. At the time, I was working as a luxury resort butler, and then I was also working as a bartender. However, I knew I didn't want to really do that for the rest of my life. And so with quite uncertainty, I lined up about 8 interviews, I would say, down in Dallas, Texas. Loaded up the car and went down. And I had all these great first job interviews, but I'm so uncertain at the time because, right after college, you really don't. I know a lot of people might have aspirations or whatnot, but I just worked in the brewing industry the whole time and hospitality. And while those made great money there, since I was working for a luxury resort and as a bartender, which made great tips, I knew it wasn't quite the job that I wanted forever. Right when I got off college, I started working as a recruiter for a very small company who mostly focused in technological recruitment. I knew eventually that I really wanted just to focus on my career, and I really needed to start setting standards for myself to see where I wanted to go. So it was kind of a big stepping stone for me, because I ultimately figured out, wow, I have really no idea what I'm getting into with this job market, especially getting out as a college student. I had all these great college jobs that it was kind of like, oh, sweet, like this is what I'll do for a little bit and then I'll move on. But when you boil it down to when you're after college, you need to start looking for something that you really want to do and that you feel happy with every day after you get out. You don't want to go to some job where you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's a grudge for you that you don't want to grind until you're 50 or 60 years old. And you're like, oh man, that was terrible. Thank God I've retired. But no, that initial first job was just kind of me putting together that I really needed to take a serious look at what I was looking for a job, which was mostly stability. I was looking for a paycheck at that time. I had just spent a bunch of money to move myself down to Dallas, and while the job market is great here, you still got to go out and look for a job at the end of the day. So I picked up another job part-time, waiting tables at a local restaurant here where I live. And I started interviewing again, and I knew that I either wanted to really work in the brewing industry, because that's what I did all the way through college. I absolutely loved it. I loved dealing with people, hearing about their day, really exploring myself, learning about new recipes, different ways to express yourself, not through just yourself, but through a product that people really fall in love with. And then I initially got an interview for an internship with a big multimedia company, and who had some very enthusiastic people that worked there. And we're talking about how great it was to work for this company. And I ultimately settled there, and I stayed there for 2 years. It was fantastic. And I ultimately left that, but it gave me a lot of ammunition to my arsenal, which I have on my resume. I got to work with people. I got to work with a product that helped out so many small business owners across our country. And I couldn't really ask for much more of that, but I knew at the end of that it was ultimately wasn't what I'm looking for. And we can all say it. I'm only 26 years old, that we're still looking to find ourselves. And how I look at it every day, I set a few goals for myself to just learn something new every day. And that's the best we can do. One thing that I found out, at least halfway through working for this big multi-company, national media company, was you're ultimately your biggest advocate. You can work at all these places. I know that most of our parents have had the same job since they got out of college, or maybe they just had the same job out of high school and just got generally promoted all the way through. My brother has been that way. My dad, he worked for a large airline his whole life as a pilot. My mom worked as a flight attendant her whole life. But ultimately, you're your biggest advocate when you're going into a new workplace, a new job, or especially when you're looking for a career for yourself. And you got to think about that. Especially when you're right out of college, you have all these negative thoughts like, oh man, there's all these other people. Maybe you went to an okay university or whatnot, and you're stuck in your head like, oh man, all these people have all these other big advantages over me. And I don't know how I'm going to compete with that. But ultimately, you got to put those thoughts out of your mind, or you'll never progress as a person. You'll just try to grind it out every day and you'll be miserable. So always just trying to make the best of your situation. But if you feel like your situation isn't accommodating you and you feel miserable every single day of your life, you need to get out of there just immediately. Like, don't ever think about it again. But of course, if you're trying to make a career switch, at least start applying for jobs and then do the interviews and go through the whole process before you quit your job. Because I've known quite a few people, including myself a couple of times, not recently at all, but where I made the mistake of quitting my job early. And then I was out of a job for about maybe a month or a couple of weeks. And you get into this groove of like, oh, this is okay again, but it's really not, because ultimately what we're trying to do is prepare for our futures, and we're trying to find a career that's going to really uplift us, that's going to make us happy to do, or happy to, especially in my situations, I hope I'm helping other people out every day in my job, and I'm making it easier for other people to do what they do best. And ultimately, I want some, emotional significance out of my job. I want to feel great every day. And I know that doesn't always happen, but if you're not feeling great, if you feel absolutely miserable every day at your job, you should leave. I remember one day I was working for this multinational company, and ultimately I really wasn't happy with where I was at. I was really depressed. I wasn't really sleeping very well. My physical activity was almost zero. I was really depressed most days. And one great support system that I have is my spouse, someone that I can rely on and touch my feelings to. And if you don't have that, I would talk to your close friends, talk to your parents, talk about other people about how you're feeling and where you're at in your life, because ultimately what we're trying to achieve is happiness within our careers. So when you take that into consideration, if you're feeling like crap every day, you ultimately need to find a new groove for yourself. You need to find something else. And the change doesn't have to be immediate, but at least show progression to it. My grandfather always told me was that when you go to sleep at night, you should go to sleep without any worries, because then you're going to worry about the next day and the next day after that, and it's just going to be a recurring theme. I ultimately took that advice on myself, and I kind of put all of my components together and said, I'm ultimately not happy. I need to try something else. I'm really scared because I don't know where my career is going to go after this. I had a lot of aspirations. I had a lot of interests, as I said before. I'd worked in hospitality, so I was like, maybe I'll try that. I'll give that a try. Or I'll go into brewing, and I'll give that a try. So I'd interview with all these different companies, hospitality, brewing, and whatnot. And ultimately, I found myself at a recreation center and pursuing a degree in hospitality, which I thought was the right move. Then ultimately, I had to readjust and find out that that's not what I was looking for either. Because while I enjoyed the aspect of dealing with people every day, talking to them, being a guiding figure in some younger people's lives, that ultimately I had some higher career aspirations and I have some higher goals that actually require a little bit more of a salary that would provide me in life. So I ultimately had to start looking at all these different proponents. It's like, okay, so I need a job where I'm going to be satisfied in what I'm doing. It needs to make okay money where I can actually live a decent life, so I can go visit my friends. I can still keep doing my hobbies. Me and my fiance could be happily sound. I can, provide for her, and she has a great job as well. So to be a contributing factor in that as well is very important to me. Ultimately, I just kind of laid all these different proponents out, and I made a goal out of it. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And ultimately what happened is I kind of went back and looked at a couple of recruiters who were friends, and I said, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help me out? And that's where I ended up today. Whenever I'm kind of down on myself or not, I fall back into my hobby is something that I'm good at. I helped brew beer for 2 years in college, and I've continued on with that hobby as I've progressed through life. And it's something that I continue to get better and better at. I'm also into archery, and that helps me get better and better at. And ultimately, you just kind of feel these little things with your lives where you're good at, and where you set your own standards and your own goals. And that's really important in your life. But another huge component to all of this is, I would say, that a lot of people, when they're suffering, is they tend not to express themselves with other human beings. And that's a very negative thing to do, especially for yourself, because we need that outlet, and we need ourselves to hear ourselves say that we're in trouble or we need help with this. I typically try to run for an hour every day, and that's kind of where I work out all my frustrations. And not just that physical activity is great for your state of mind, but also I found it that when you really get the blood flowing, you can kind of find yourself out of ways of different situations. And just you going out and doing something is positive in the sense that you're accomplishing something. You might not accomplish something every day at work, especially if you're learning something new, which I'm always learning something new, so I always feel kind of lost. But there's always a standpoint where you need to readjust your way of thinking. You can be so anxious in everything that you do, but if you let that anxiety take over your life, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to progress. Another thing that I do, one thing that I was always really bad at was, not bad, I was pretty average, was my schoolwork. And I had always felt bad about it, that I'd never put enough time into it. I've always kind of slacked off in college, and I was like, I'm getting okay grades. I'll definitely graduate. I'll get into the program that I want, but I was never really striving to succeed. And I kind of evaluated that stuff. That was one of the proponents that I was talking about earlier. It's like, if I kind of down on myself because I was thinking that I wasn't very smart. I wasn't intelligent. I was just kind of substandard at education. So one thing that I did was I really worked on myself. I enrolled through a couple different programs that I've had with different companies to just take some community college courses to get my grades up, do all these other classes. Maybe I'll find something new that I like to do as well. And then another big proponent too is, especially while we're in an education system or anything like that, if you're taking college courses, if you're getting a certificate through a different program for schooling, or say that you're even outreaching to maybe people in your own organization that are teaching or anything like that, talk with them. Ask them how you're doing. Give them a standpoint. Am I really learning this? How does my performance measure up? Was my paper good? Was it? Or is my paper bad? You just have to keep reevaluating yourself as you kind of go over and over again. But make sure that you're always getting positive and negative feedback, just to make sure that you're on your right track. Because if you're not getting that negative feedback, that means you're not progressing as well, because you're not working on the things that maybe you're not too good at. But ultimately what I'm saying is, if you're having a really hard time, just remember there has to be something that you're good at, and try to find that. Maybe go do that for 30 minutes and then come back and reevaluate. Because I know every person that probably listens to this is good at something, definitely 100%. So find solace in that. One thing that I always say is always make sure that you're putting yourself in the spotlight and that you're evaluating yourself, maybe not every day, but at least take a look at yourself every month. There's a reason that in your companies that you have one-on-ones with your bosses, maybe team meetings where you guys kind of evaluate yourself. Look at yourself and see how you're doing. If you've been thinking about something really hard for a really long time, maybe it's a different career choice, maybe it's picking up a side degree or finally deciding to pursue your master's degree or getting that certificate that might help you later on. Look at ways that which you can do that where it's feasible for you and pull the trigger. I personally never thought that I would pursue my own master's degree later on, but here I am, 3 years graduated and finally starting to pull those triggers on my own. If you have a goal in mind, make sure that you're taking an adequate amount of time throughout your day and planning to achieve that goal. Otherwise, you'll never get there.